I'm Ezra Shanken. I'm the current CEO of the Jewish Federation of Greater Vancouver.
And how long have you been in that position?
3.5 years. I came here from New York City, where I was at UJA Federation of New York. I was actually quite lucky that some of our leadership wanted to take a chance on a young guy and bring him out into this community and have a chance for our family to be able to grow here.
When did you first get involved with federations? And what was your first involvement? Where?
It was Super Sunday when I was a kid. I remember in high school, maybe even before, coming to Super Sunday, which was a day that we would hold. We used to hold it here in Vancouver also, where we would call donors up and we would ask them for their gifts. And I would get on the phone, long lines of people on the phone, and they'd give you a script and they'd give you some cards, and I'd make some calls. And that was the first interaction I had with. Also, ironically, the moment that I tag as one of the major moments in my life where I really started to understand that there might be a potential for me to do this professionally was when I was 15 years old in Israel, standing really on the hills rolling down to Lake Kinneret. I had kind of an aha moment. That trip was actually funded by the Jewish Federation of Northern New Jersey. So I've been very lucky that the Federation itself has been with me for quite a long time. My professional career started in Colorado at the Jewish Federation there. Moving from Colorado, I went to New York City to the UJA Federation of New York, and then I was lucky enough to come here.
And was there something specific that triggered your involvement with Federation in Colorado?
You know, I was completing graduate school, and I was very into the political world. I wanted to find a career that gave me three things. One, I wanted something that was highly political. That was really energizing for me. I liked the dynamics there. I wanted something where I felt like I was making a difference. I'd go to sleep at night and I'd go to sleep really understanding that the world was a little bit better off because of what I did during the day. And the third, which came a little bit later, but was definitely part of the lexicon, was something that was spiritually enriching, something that was congruent with my ethnic and religious life. When I was completing graduate school, there weren't a lot of jobs. There happened to be an opening at the Federation. I was a Hillel president. I happened to be kind of around. I'm third generation in this work, so every time I'm out, they pull me back in. I went in and had a conversation with a woman. They tell the story. I came in a tan leisure suit during it was the summer. It was the summer, and she looked at me across the table and she said, "You belong here." And I've been so privileged over my 13, 14 years in this work to say you belong here a lot of times to a lot of amazing people that have started their journeys or continued their journeys or finished their journeys in Federation life and making a difference in their Jewish community.
So you arrived here, I think you said 3.5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
What were some of the bigger eye-openers for you in terms of coming from something like, East U.S. to a small community here in Vancouver?
We're not that small. I like to say we are a mighty community here in British Columbia. We have, in many ways, we feel larger than where I started in Colorado because of just the structure and the culture of the community and how much togetherness there is. I mean, I was struck by three things. One, the Canadians are really different. There's a different historical narrative. There's a lot more going on here than what we, growing up in the U.S., might have perceived. And it's quite incredible to see those differences. Two, we seemed to be a community that was really on a roll. As a Jewish community, I was so lucky to take over for Mark Gervis, my predecessor. The irony is my wife was working for Mark Gervis at Jewish Federations of North America when I got the job. So Mark has been good to our family for quite a while. And he didn't really tell me how strong we really were. And it's a credit to him and those who came before him really set me up for success. The third I'll say is more tangential. to see how our rabbis behave with each other in a positive way is really exciting for me. I had never been in a community where everybody seemed to be, by and large, in lockstep, and that's not where we came from. Now that I understand the historical narrative, I know how much hard work it took to bring everybody to the table. But today, they're an incredible tool for me and for us in being able to push a community agenda.
Are the challenges that Federation faced when you first got here versus the challenges that are being faced today by the community any significant differences, or has it been the same?
Well, you know, when we first got here, one of the things that I wanted to do was really listen to the community, really understand where people were coming from. This was our opportunity to say, I'm new. You know, can I ask you, are we doing the right things? Is this Federation reflecting your values? And we were able to, through that, start to glean from people some of those interests, which do, in many ways, ring true today. I think one of the challenges that the Federation faces is that we deal with big issues, and big issues take time. You know, we're both, you know, we're an aircraft carrier, you know, lumbering along there. We bring a lot of power to the game, but we move a bit slowly. You know, were we talking about housing in the same way we're talking about it today when I first got here? I wish we had bought a house when I first got here, because I'd be a millionaire. But it's changed. That has changed a bit. But were we talking about regional community strategy, the emergence of Jewish community outside of Vancouver? Drew was talking about that. My predecessor, Drew Staffenberg, was talking about that when we founded Kahila in Richmond as a possible future satellite for the Federation that never quite got to that point, but has done really exciting things. So I think that some of the conversations are similar, but as we continue to evolve as a federation, the conversations morph to meet what it is that we're doing right now. So we're focusing on 5 key things, you know, today. That was identified through research that we did after we talked to our community, went into some research phases. We looked at the census. We saw what was coming out from the government. We married it with research that we were doing internally and the expertise of our professionals. And we were able to come up with this Our Community 2020, which has been one of the major capstone pieces of my first part of my tenure, was really trying to set a course for 2020 that identifies 5 areas that are not unfamiliar to us, but some of them needed to be reestablished, others are emerging. And we look at kind of this idea of you know, security, which has been an on-again, off-again issue for us. We look at the engagement strategy for our young people and others. We're looking at seniors, where our seniors population is doubling by 2030. We knew that before I got here. We knew when I got here. You know, we're looking at affordability, and we're looking at accessibility. The barriers that are keeping people both geographically or economically away from the enlightenment that Jewish life can bring to them. So I would say that 3.5 years in Jewish terms is very short.
Those 5 things that you just mentioned, in particular, the last couple items, which are the focus of this year's campaign. Why is that important? Why is that accessibility important to the community?
The world is a complicated place, especially for our kids. I know that as a father of 16-month-old twins, I think of the world that they're growing up in and what tools will they have in their toolbox to be able to engage successfully as caring, compassionate, driven, excited, successful people. And I know a lot of that comes from Jewish values. You know, we find a lot of times that Judaism is very, very good for us in times of pressure, when the outside community is just pushing in on us and really creating a situation in which we just can't not be who we are. We are who we are because they tell us that way. We're not living in that time right now, which means that the work that we do is actually even more important. our young people and our older people are navigating an environment where I say, not since Rome have we had so many gods telling us what we should and shouldn't be doing in our lives. And this is an opportunity for us to make access possible for people to find and be able to learn and grow with the values that Jewish life has, not just because we want them to count themselves as a number, but because we know it's making them better people. And now more than ever, when we have the capacity to do so much good, we need to be investing in our people's values. That's why accessibility and affordability is so important. You cannot move away from being Jewish. I was talking to a Catholic friend and he said, I don't get you guys. I've got all these friends who are Jewish and they don't understand theology. I said, well, what you don't understand is in Catholics, it's something you believe, right? If you believe in the resurrection, if you believe in the Trinity, you are a Catholic. You dunk yourself in the pool, cleanse yourself, emerge, become part of this new community, follow as a belief structure. Being Jewish is something that we are. You can't dunk it in and you can't dunk it away. I believe that people who convert to Judaism were always Jewish all along. So it's something that's in us. It lives in us. We're born into it. We're owning it. That's why we have to encourage people to learn more about it, to have that be a value. Because it can just be something that you wear, like a shirt or a hat or anything like that. We think it's more than that. And this thing that called federation is not an accident. This is something that's made. This is premeditated social engineering. Judaism understands that we have to work together to make great things happen, and that we are responsible for one another. But people are only going to understand that if they have access to the points in which their children and others can learn those things.
You mentioned the strategic plan as one of the things you're proud of in your first 3.5 years. Any other Federation achievements in your first 3.5 years, granted that's a brief window, that stand out for you?
You know, when I walked into an incredible staff, a great bunch of people, a strong community. I also walked into a war in Gaza. I mean, I remember one of the early memories of coming here 3.5 years ago was then our Israel and Overseas Committee Chair, Stephen Gerber, coming up to me and saying, it's time to make your first trip to Israel. This was only a few months in to me even being here. He said, we got to go over there. We got to show our solidarity. So we got on a plane and we went over and the rocket stopped. So I say, you're welcome. Because I don't know how else it happened, but we got on the plane and we went over there and everything stopped. But I'll tell you, we saw incredible things. We brought a community together during a really difficult time. You know, I called every family that I could find that had a kid that was being called up, and I was blown away by how many families in our community had kids who were being called up. To this day, people talk about it. One of the things that I find to be one of the most fulfilling parts of my job or my tenure that I've been here is really connecting with people. I believe the community starts at the grassroots level. One Jew calling another Jew and checking in and seeing how they're doing. I had a woman come up to me at an event just maybe a month ago. We were having a PJ Library event in Richmond, and I was there with my kids, and I was about to leave, and a woman grabbed my arm, and I turned around, and she introduced herself, and she said, you may not remember me, but 2.5 years ago I was battling cancer, and you called me to check in, and it meant the world to me. I remember leaving and I said to my wife, that's what it's all about right there. That's federation. Watching out for each other. I've seen funerals, I've seen weddings, I've seen brisses. I've seen this community over the past 3.5 years live a life with all of the positives and challenges. You know, we've had 3 record campaigns, four record campaigns since I got here. And that's not about me particularly, but it's about a community that's ready to get after it. Use all that strength we've built to kind of move this thing forward. I understand that today we mark our 30th anniversary. And I would want to recognize that it is no doubt 30 years since merger. But what it is that we're doing here, and even by our own Societies Act, the first society was put in place to start doing work like this in 1924. It went through 4 or 5 different names and was finally merged into what is today, 30 years ago, a full-fledged federation. But there were so many people who over the years did the holy work of going out and asking their friends to support. I've had the pleasure of actually going to the museum and archives and going through the old pledge cards from the Funding Council campaign. Seeing the history, you start to understand that this is far before what we're talking about. Kitty Grinstein, who's an amazing thinker with the Rayut Institute, said once at a session I was at around federation, federation isn't 30 years old. It's not 50 years old. It is 3,000 years old. The tradition of having a collective campaign, the half shekel, so to speak, Jews getting together, taking the responsibility of building a society, is 3,000 years old. So I want to say happy birthday, happy 30th birthday, but this baby is a lot older than that, and I feel a great sense of pride about it. I love where we've come in 30 years. I love what we did before that. I love what we did before that. And I'm so excited to see what it is that we're going to do tomorrow.